Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Sam Malkin, and welcome to our COVID-19 office hours for the food industry. This is our 40th office hours. I didn't go out to buy a big red car or anything like that, but I wanted to thank everyone who has joined us, whether this is your 40th time or your first time, because your interest and your feedback has all allowed us to hold these office hours. I'd also like to thank the expert panelists. You've all been here since the start, sharing your expertise and helping us navigate the constant and sometimes contradictory streams of COVID-19 information so that we as processors and food producers and employees can focus on the facts, right? And then shift them away from the fiction to protect our employees and the public. It's been a great effort. And though it's unfortunate, it had to be necessary. And, looking at the numbers this morning, we are at, records, right, for our 7-day averages for cases, hospitalizations, and deaths. And we're heading into another big holiday season. So we're going to have to see what happens. But on the other hand, there are some positive steps, right? The US has administered its first vaccines yesterday, and that's what we're going to focus on at the start of today's office hours. I'm going to begin by introducing the panel. We'll do a brief update on the webpage, and then I'm going to hand it over to Martin to go into vaccines, what they are, how they've been vetted, and what we should expect as they roll out. That part of the session is going to be recorded for you to review and share. And then after that, we're going to open it back up like we always do on the office hours for the audience, you guys to ask questions and answer some of the questions you've already submitted. All right. So to keep things moving along, joining us today on our panel of experts, we've got Dr. Olga Padilla-Zakor, who is a professor of food science and the director of the Cornell Food Venture Center. We've got Dr. Elizabeth Bin, who is the director of the Produce Safety Alliance and the executive director of the Institute for Food Safety at Cornell University, that's housing all our COVID-19 information. We've got Dr. Randy Warabo, who is a professor in the Department of Food Science here at Cornell, who focuses on enhancing the safety of fruits and vegetables. We've got Dr. Martin Wiedmann, the Gellert Family Professor in Food Safety. He's the co-director of the New York State Integrated Food Safety Center of Excellence and the associate director of the Northeast Dairy Foods Research Center. We've got Dr. Aliosa Trimick, who is an extension associate in our dairy extension team and has also been critical in collating and vetting and creating a lot of the information that we have up on the Institute for Food Safety website. We've got Dr. Callie Neal joining us. She's a professor of microbial food safety in the Department of Animal and Food Sciences at the University of Delaware, and her lab focuses on exploring the transmission of public health and food safety relevant viruses, protozoa, and pathogenic bacteria. And she's also the past president of IAFP. We've got Dr. Ruth Petrin joining us, who's a senior corporate scientist of food safety and public health at Ecolab, and she works on identifying and tracking emerging food safety trends and is the president-elect for IAFP. And then I'm Sam Malkin, assistant professor here in the Department of Food Science, and my research focuses on some dairy food safety for small processors. We've also got officials from New York Ags and Markets on the call, both the food safety and dairy divisions, to answer any of the questions in that area. And remember, as you're thinking of your questions, if you're on the phone, you need to press *6 to unmute yourself, or you need to press that little chat button, open up the chat box and type in your question there. So with that, I'm going to quickly hand it over to Al to give us a quick update on the website, and then we'll get into vaccines with Martin.
Thank you very much, Sam. A quick overview. So the main thing I would like to point out that we started like 5 weeks ago, these 5-minute coronavirus updates. Every week we give you an update on the numbers and a short advice. For example, get a flu vaccine. Under minimizing your personal risks, we put an interesting computer model where that can help you estimate how many people and how long of a time you can have them in an indoor space before the risk gets too high. Under industry frequently asked questions, we don't have a new FAQ, but we do have 3 new ones under consumer resources. So go and check that out. Otherwise, check our virtual office hours page where you can find information on our next virtual office hours. And as always, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, make sure you use the contact list for our experts. Any problem you have, we can help you with it. So with this, I would just finish and give my word back to you, Sam. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Al. Thanks for the update. Yeah, don't forget to get that flu shot. It's important too. So now, talking about flu shots and vaccines, that's the perfect segue to hand it over to Martin, who's going to give us a little bit of overview on what's going on with these new COVID-19 vaccines. Thanks, Martin.
Thanks, Sam. Can you guys see my screen, and can you see it full screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, cool. So welcome everyone. So I'm going to give a quick update on, vaccines and what do we know. A lot of that might be familiar to some of you, but sort of a short overview. So we all know one vaccine has been approved under the emergency use authorization, and vaccination started in the US. I think we all expect a second one, the Moderna vaccine, to be approved soon. Both of these are messenger RNA vaccines. And there's a lot of angst out there that this is a technology that's not been used to vaccinate humans before. And that is true. It's a new technology, but there's no reason to assume that this technology is less safe than existing vaccines. Honestly, my opinion is I'd rather take an mRNA vaccine, much rather take an mRNA vaccine than a live attenuated strain. So I have no concerns about the safety, and I think all experts would agree on this. There are other vaccines that are also not live viruses that have been attenuated. So these are adenovirus-based vaccines moving along. The AstraZeneca vaccine falls into that category. Also, a lot of angst saying, this is the fastest we ever developed vaccines. Does this mean shortcuts have been made? Do we have to worry about it? Once again, no. We put a lot of money, effort behind it. Everyone worked faster, harder than before. And the trials could be faster because we have more cases. It's much easier to quickly identify whether the vaccine works if you have so many infections happening. One key take-home point, we don't know, despite the fact that we know that the vaccine works, we don't know how long it gives us immunity. There are a number of other things that we don't know, and that is important. One question that was pre-submitted is, what does this 95% efficacy mean? And here's what it looks like. So these are actually the Pfizer data. And you can see we had two groups. We have people vaccinated in the placebo group. So they think they received a vaccine, but they didn't get a vaccine. They just got phosphate buffered saline or something similar. Basically everything without the actual vaccine, and then people that received the vaccine. 8 people with the vaccine still got this disease. So this is not a perfect vaccine. None is. 162 of the placebo group were infected. Your 95.3% efficacy is 162 out of a total of 170. That's how we come up with this number. So take home message, don't stop wearing masks, and we reiterate it. Don't stop social distancing. As long as there's a lot of transmission going around, there's still a risk of these people, even if they're vaccinated, to get sick. And there's still a risk that's much less well-defined that people that are vaccinated might still be able to spread the disease, even though they don't show symptoms. Based on these data, here are the public health recommendations taken from a CDC presentation to clinicians. And now the same points that I emphasized for food industry emphasized here. We don't know how well the vaccine works. We don't know how well it prevents transmission. So the current guidance still has to be followed. Wear masks, practice social distancing, avoid crowds, et cetera, et cetera. Key points for industry. My expectation, looking at the data and looking at these, I don't expect to see food and ag workers to get vaccines much before February, March 2021, despite the fact that we pump out vaccines at quite a pace now. More on that later. But industry has to prepare now for what to do when vaccination starts and it becomes available. Will you require vaccination? Everything I've seen is, yes, you can require vaccination. How well will they come over with your workers, with the public? That's a different question, okay? But it's something you should think about. How will you encourage vaccination? If you don't require it, what will you do to make sure as many of your employees as possible get vaccinated? Start planning on it, start communicating. How will you assure continuation of the current control strategies, particularly once you have some people vaccinated, others not, so-called vaccination overlap? Well-planned, well-communicated, and consistent rollout is key. Clearly communicate to everyone that they still need to follow the basic prevention practices. We're going to see the situation now. I don't need to do this because I had COVID. I don't need to do it because I got vaccinated, and so on and so on. Prepare to manage that because we are likely to expect some of these conflicts. Encourage flu vaccination on top of everything else. Don't forget that vaccine is there. It's out there. It can reduce the overall health risk to your workers, and it can reduce people thinking they might have COVID-19 when it's the flu. So don't forget about the flu vaccine. Encourage that vaccine. This is what we know about the current vaccination plan. You need 2 doses. Everyone's seen this. Immunity expected 7 to 14 days after the second dose, or full immunity. The plan at this point is 20 million people vaccinated in December. That means 40 million doses, 30 million in January, 50 million in February. So 100 million people vaccinated by end of February. Once the second vaccine gets approved, that might get fast and we might have more vaccines available. Now, to phase 1A, and some of you have seen this, there's an interim phase 1 sequence. Phase 1A is where we are right now. These are healthcare personnel, long-term care facility residents. That pool is 24 million people, okay? So that puts us smack into, January under this scenario. Then we move into group 1B. Not quite as easy to figure out how many people fall into this group, which is essential workers. The estimates, so I've seen somewhere 80 to 90 million potentially in this group. And this is obviously people like police, firefighters, but food and agriculture and education sector is in there. The industry and US members should do all you can to continue to make sure that we are heard, that we feel like we must stay in phase 1B group. And then also the question is where to prioritize within that. My gut feeling is food and agriculture is going to be on the lower end of that priority list within phase 1B. Hence my estimate of, we talk in February, March before we start vaccination of people that work in our facilities and work with us. Vaccine safety. Now, prepare for this. Let's all make sure we don't become part of the miscommunication issues that are gonna come out. And here's, not think this is miscommunication. These are the headlines we will see more. Britain warns of allergic reactions to vaccine. People will freak out and react and will think they should not get vaccinated because of this, even if, they fall into a group that should be vaccinated. We've gone through the trials that, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4 trials. You've seen, we've had more than 20, 30,000 people that had the vaccine right now. We followed, FDA and the companies followed to identify side effects. Sure, there are some side effects, as there are with all vaccines, but none of them severe enough that this would stop vaccine implementation. And when you look at the data, you can see, yes, people died within a month after taking the vaccine, but people also died within a month after taking the placebo. We cannot take anecdotes for science. We have the science, we've done the trials with large numbers. Just because someone who took the vaccine and then got COVID afterwards doesn't mean the vaccine caused COVID. It definitely did not. You can get COVID after your first shot because you don't have the immunity yet. It doesn't mean there's something wrong with the vaccine. These are the things that were done to make sure the vaccines, were safe. Just what I pointed out is, they're faster to produce than traditional. The fast timeline that we had is not a reason to not trust these vaccines. And here's why we were able to do, fast timelines. mRNA vaccines are expected to produce side effects, particularly after the second dose. Here's some of the typical side effects you see. But again, we have some really good safety data from the various trials. Important, these vaccines will not give you COVID-19. They can't. It's a small part of the genetic material of the virus that alone cannot give you disease, and its messenger RNA on top of it, which is very unstable. But you can get COVID-19 after you had your first vaccination. Let's say you were exposed 2 days ago, you get vaccinated today. You're probably still going to get COVID-19. It doesn't mean the vaccine gave it to you, obviously. So be aware, these things will happen and we will hear about it. Let's find anecdotes with science to make sure we get broad implementation and broad uptake of the vaccine. And this is, as I said, my take-home message. There will be anecdotes of vaccine failures and there will be anecdotes of severe side effects. Let's fight them as real science. Now, I'm not saying there isn't a chance that we detect some side effects that we didn't know existed, okay? That can happen, that is science. They're gonna be extremely rare if we find them, and this is unlikely, or they occur in very, very specific groups, all right? So I'm not saying it couldn't be, but I guarantee you we see a lot more anecdotes, a lot more inaccurate information than we will see accurate information from people we know. Let's be prepared for that. If you need more information, get information from reliable sources. CDC, Journal of the American Medical Association, The New York Times coronavirus vaccine tracker is one that I use if you want to know where the other vaccines are, when are they coming up. Use reliable information, not your Twitter feed, if at all possible, to get good information about this. That's what I have. Let's open it, put it back, give it back to Sam, and let's open it up for questions. Thank you very much.
Great, thanks, Martin.